Azriel Knight here, and welcome to another episode of Days of Night. And if you've been following along on my channel, then you know that it's been a hot second since I've done an episode of Days of Night. There's a good reason for that, and if you want to hear it, I'll tell you. And if you're not interested at all, I will leave a timestamp right there. Basically, to sum things up, I got burnt out of shooting with a different camera every week, and I needed to reevaluate how I am as a photographer. And I do this a lot, and recording videos definitely helps me do that, because I can always review my work and think back on old videos and whether that helped me or hindered me. But the truth of the matter is I needed to boil down my collection. Now, I know I did a what's in my bag in 2021, but I actually ended up selling all my Fuji equipment in exchange for a Nikon DSLR to go with my Nikon film SLR. I didn't want to have a 35mm lens and a 50mm lens for multiple systems. I wanted to take one 35mm and 150mm and one main zoom lens and whatever, and be able to snap it on to both my digital camera and my film camera. And I actually also have a third use for the digital camera, and that is for video. Right now I'm video recording with my new Nikon D780, and I'm using a 35mm I originally bought for my f100, which is the Nikkor 35mm f1.8G. I did a review on it recently. I'll leave a link for that in the description. Yeah, I want to eventually do a video where I talk about how a camera collection can actually hinder you in some regards, but that's for a future video. And yeah, those who've been following me for the last couple of years know that I've been trying to introduce more minimalism into my photography, and so far it's been great. I actually shoot more. I shoot more than I did when I had 50 or 60 cameras, because I was usually paralyzed by choice. But now I know I've got my Nikon film camera, my Nikon digital camera, or my Pentax 6.7, and that's basically it. If I want to shoot instant, I've got a couple of choices. I've also got a baby graphic if I want to shoot 6x9 medium format negatives. But yeah, like 5-6 cameras, somewhere in that range, and mostly just the D780 here and my Nikon F100. That being said, though, I do miss testing new cameras. Not to keep for my collection, but because I know that it provides good content for those who've just found a camera. I know there are those of you watching that are looking for this camera that I've keyworded today, which is the Canon T90. Here it is, the Canon T90. This was actually donated to me by, I want to say his name is Timothy O'Connor from Australia. If I got that wrong, I'm really sorry. I definitely know he's from Australia. Almost 100% anyway. And this lens I actually thrifted very recently. It is a Canon 100mm f2.8. I haven't tested it yet, so it'll be a fresh test on the Canon T90 and a fresh test on the 100mm f2.8. Yeah, if that isn't enough, I'm also going to be testing this Vivitar 17mm f3.5. Now, this thing, super beat up. This part right here was bent inward, and I just bent it back out with a pair of pliers. I definitely took a risk when I bought this, but it also came with a bunch of other stuff, including that 100mm lens. So I am really looking forward to seeing if this thing works. Now, I've checked the aperture to make sure it closed down properly, and it does. It does. We're going to take a closer look at this camera and both these lenses at my table right now. Okay, folks, here is the Canon T90 in all its glory. Pretty simple to turn on. Just go from L to A, and your LCD panel should turn on there. This particular model looks like it's in really good condition. That looks super clean to me. It takes 4 AA batteries. And just like modern DSLRs, it has an aperture priority, a program mode, a bulb, shutter priority, etc. I tend to stick to aperture priority. There is a automatic aperture setting on the 17mm lens, as well as the 100mm lens. Sounds good. Sounds a little rough. This is the depth of field preview. You can see it's closed it down to f/22. Looks like 3 metering modes. I'd have to check the manual for the exact names, but that is almost definitely spot. That is probably center weighted, and that is probably evaluative. If you want to override your ISO, you can do that with this button right here. Just hold it in and adjust. If you want to adjust your exposure compensation, that button's right here, and then adjust. Tough to see here in good lighting, but if you want to illuminate the LCD panel, it's this button right here. If you're doing some kind of long exposure photography and you want to make sure no light gets through the back, you can just snap the viewfinder shut with this switch here. Hidden away on the side panel here are a few more features, including changing shooting modes. You just press this button here to go from single to high rate to low rate. That's pretty impressive, actually. And there's a switch as well if you want to set it to self-timer. Here's your film rewind, override, and your battery check. 3 bars, probably good. And that's about the gist of it. This is the film I'll be testing it with. Kentemere Pan 100, Harman technology. Also responsible for the ever-popular Ilford. Loading is pretty straightforward. Take it over to the orange line and close. There we go. It's now showing me that there's a roll of film in there, and I'm on shot number 1. And yeah, I'm going to take this bad boy out for a proper test. I'm not going to be able to do it today, though, because there's only about 2 hours of sunlight left, and that is the life of a Canadian during the winter time. However, for you, it'll be instant. All right, folks, I'm out here in DeWinton, Alberta. It's a hamlet just south of Calgary. And the reason why I'm here is because I'm working on a project capturing Alberta's grain elevators. Now, when I got here, I immediately noticed that the grain elevators are potentially privately owned. I don't know if I can access them, which is unfortunate. However, I have a 100mm lens with me, so I should be able to capture at least a few different angles. I'm sort of parked on the side of the road right now. I'm gonna walk sort of down the road and capture it. Capture the grain elevators from a couple of different sides. Here's a look at it from where I'm at right now. There's a neat truck out front there. I don't think I'm going to be able to utilize my 17mm lens today because that would involve getting closer than I think I'm going to be able to. Nonetheless, I'm going to get what I can from here, and then I'll drive around and I'll see if I can get a better angle. You guys hear that in the background? That dog hasn't shut up since I parked, and I'm now at least 100 meters away and it's still going. Man, give it a rest. I'm not a threat. You may also notice the sound of machines. That means that the grain elevators are being used, which is great. It means it's not going to get demolished anytime soon. Sorry, I was just looking behind me because I am walking on the road. Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to walk to the side here. Here's what I'm working with now. I just need to get a little further away because I'm working with a 100mm focal length, and that bleeping dog is still barking. I'm gonna be able to get a couple of better shots of the grain elevators here from the field. I might get low in order to give a sweeping look, and then I will probably make my way back to the car to try and get another angle. I drove around for like 2 minutes and I came across another angle. It does appear further away. It's closer to the eye than it is to the camera, the video camera here. And it should be a little closer, well, more than a little closer, for the 100mm focal length. You can see it's partially covered by the hill here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk back and get a better angle. Then I might drive up there and see if I can get it from another angle. Right now I'm on shot 16 or so. Yeah, since I'm just working with one subject here, I can be a little bit more liberal with my shots. Okay, I took a zip around the corner and nada. It's a dead end. I'm on shot number 27. I've shot almost the entire roll. There's an interesting general store back in town. I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna use the 17mm to get shots of that general store. Maybe have a peek inside. Who knows? Maybe they'll let me photograph in there. Well, as it turns out, it's abandoned. You can see it right behind me there. Just adjust the exposure so you can get a better look at it. And I should have known. I mean, it said open, like the sign wasn't lit up, but there was a sign that said open. A little disappointing, but I probably should have guessed by the rotting wood that is a sign. I think I did pretty good here today, though. I got 31 exposures. I'm just gonna, rewind the film when I get home. I might see something on the way home, so I won't rewind the film until I get home and I make sure that I've, exhausted all of my possibilities. For the most part, I got grain elevator shots. I got one shot of that barking dog. I got a couple other random things. For now, though, before I get home and develop this, I'm going to go thrifting. If you're not aware, at the $7 level on my Patreon, I show all of my thrift hauls. So if that's something that you're interested in, then definitely sign up. I try and make 2 to 4 videos per month, depending, how many times I go out and if I find anything. But I show you the good, the bad. I definitely show you when I screw up and I buy a dud. Enough of that rambling. I'm going to hit some thrift stores on the way home, and then I'm going to develop this roll. It'll be instant for you, of course, though. All right, guys, I'm back home now. I'm in the darkroom, and I am ready to develop this roll. So one of the books that I've been reading lately is called The Film Developing Cookbook by Bill Troop with Steve Ankel. Ankel or Anchel? One of the two. Anyway, this thing has been... It's a very heavy read, but it has been a wealth of knowledge. And it's made me rethink my developing process, as learning about new techniques will. One of the things that I believe I'm going to implement today, it's pretty simple. Right here in Chapter 4, it talks about developing procedures. The following film sizes are approximately equal to 8 by 10 inches or 80 square inches. Throughout the text, whenever 8 by 10 inches of film or 80 inches is referred to, it will be considered equivalent to one 35mm roll of 36 exposures, one 120 roll, four 4x5" sheets, etc., etc. Where it says, undilute developers using a minimum of 250 milliliters for D76 X-Tol DDX, and we strongly recommend 300 to 350 milliliters. I found that interesting. For undiluted, I've used 300. Dilute developers, at least 500 milliliters for D76 1:1, Rodinal 125 or 150, FX1 to HC110 131 from concentrate, and PMK. What it says for one roll of 35mm film is to use 500 milliliters of finished solution. I find that really interesting, and I don't claim to completely understand it, but there's an old expression from a favorite movie of mine. I can get a pretty good look at a T-bone steak by sticking my head up a bull's ass, but I'd rather take the butcher's word for it. And in this case, like, I'm just going to take their word for it. These guys are the absolute experts of the experts. So I'll be using a 2-spool tank to develop one 35mm roll, and I'll be using 500 milliliters of solution. All right, have my D76 1+1 all mixed up. Looks like I'm working with almost exactly 68 Fahrenheit. And yeah, I'm not going to do a pre-bath. I'm just going to listen to the book. That's why I bought it. I didn't buy it to question everything in it. I bought it for it to just tell me what the best practices were. One of the other things I learned from the book is that stop bath is no better than water after a couple of uses, and that includes indicator stop bath. And I've already been doing this already for a little while now, but I just use stop bath as a one-shot. Okay, folks, wish me luck, as always. I did put 2 spools in to make sure I kept this one down at the bottom. Oh, I see photos. That's a good sign. Okay, here they are, soaking in my photo flow for another, 20 seconds or so. Then I'm going to hang them up to dry. No waiting for you though. Here are today's highlights and my contact sheet. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed those photos. I definitely think I got a few good shots there of the grain elevators in De Winton for my collection. I will be doing more grain elevator shots in future videos because it's a project that I'm passionate about, and eventually I want to do a book on Alberta grain elevators. So I hope you'll have a good time coming with me on that journey. The other thing that I should mention is that the 17mm hood was still creeping into my shot. I'll give a couple of examples here. I think this is because the thing is rattling off the lens itself, and any slight change in the position of the hood is probably going to mean it's going to come into the shot just because of how wide this lens is, this focal length is. If you know an easy fix, definitely let me know in the comments. Also, a funny little anecdote, you definitely know you're in Alberta when you have to brake for a tumbleweed. You can see here from my dash cam, I had to hit the brakes on this tumbleweed so it wouldn't get caught in my undercarriage. And you could see in the rear view image, it got stuck to the car behind me that didn't react quite as quickly. Yeah, out of all the things I've had to dodge on the highway, I don't think a tumbleweed in the winter is one of those things. First, I'm going to talk about the film, and then I'm going to talk about the camera. So what did I think of Kentemere 100? It's okay. It's, nothing horrible, but nothing fantastic. It is a budget film, so the main motivation for somebody to use Kentemere 100 is saving money. One of the good things I will say about it is that it laid flat. I found that the negatives were slightly unforgiving in the highlights. I'm not sure how I would combat this. Well, I know one of the ways is that I wouldn't shoot as contrasty situations with Kentemere 100. There was also a sudden drop from midtones to shadows. I found that there was a lot of detail in the photos that should have been there in the midtones that acted like shadow detail. And I don't believe that this would be the case if I was using Tri-X or HP5. Overall, I think Kentemere 100 is a decent film, but it's a little unforgiving. You would probably benefit most by using it on an overcast day. Okay, let's talk about the Canon T90. Overall, what do I think of the Canon T90? Again, not a fantastic, amazing camera, but not a horrible camera either. The main benefit that you're going to get from using a Canon T90 is using AA batteries. Like, if you're out in the field and you've forgotten your batteries, or if they suddenly die, you are one 7-Eleven trip away from getting new batteries for your camera. One of the main drawbacks of this camera is it's not a quiet camera. If you want to do street photography, this might not be the camera for you, as you're going to draw a lot of attention to yourself. If you don't care about that, if you're out there doing street photography and RZ67s, then all the power to you. But if you want to gain every advantage you can in terms of that genre, then you might want to look into a quieter camera. That's about it though. I enjoyed my return to Days of Night here and reviewing cameras, and even though I am considering myself a minimalist in photography, I still like to dabble in other film cameras. It's just I won't be adding them to my collection moving forward. If you own a T90 already and you agree or disagree with what I'm saying here, definitely let me know in the comments. If you're thinking of buying one, I would say it's if you liked what you heard from the positives and you didn't care about the negatives that I mentioned, go for it. T90 is a fine camera. Canon FD glass is plentiful. You're not going to have any problems finding lenses for your camera. And that's all for now. I hope you like what I do around here. If you do, I hope you'll consider becoming my patron on Patreon. As I mentioned earlier, I do thrift haul videos, and that starts at the $7 level on my Patreon, and I produce 2 to 4 of those videos per month. You can also get stuff like early access, free prints, and access to my Discord. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and until next time, stay classic.